Enshrouded Wake of the Water update brought a ton of new changes, but one they failed to mention was the changes to skills, and I firmly believe that a lot of players are struggling when it comes to combat because they've been approaching their skills the same way as prior to the update, which is why we're going to combine skills from all the different trees today to create an incredible Ice Ranger build, who counters enemies with brutal merciless attacks, or should enemies hit too hard, keep them at bay with a handy bow. But the real strength of this build comes out at night, where you can sustain yourself with lunar orbs, increasing damage output as well as sustaining yourself for longer with health orbs. So let's get into it. And starting off, we're going to cover the changes to the skills, as this affects all players' builds, followed by this particular skill tree loadout. Then we'll cover the armor that we're going to use, as well as weapons, gems, and food. And don't worry, if Ice Ranger isn't the route that you want to take, the skill changes should be useful regardless of your playstyle. Just let me know which build you're going for in the comments below. Let's get started. Now, it's really important to understand how the different skills affect your character in this. Now, originally, if you went to skills, you had the kind of ranger, archer archetype with the assassin, and which used dexterity. Then you had the strength-based characters and the magic wielders. And the skills didn't mix. So you would, generally speaking, go for a pure build. However, in this update, they have changed it so that certain skill sets affect all classes, or at least all of a certain weapon. So for example, magic, what I've been wanting to be changed for a long time, has finally been changed so that all fire damage, in this case, is increased by 10%. Doesn't matter if you're using a magic spell that casts fire, if you're using a elemental arrow, let's say, that is fire based, I know we don't have them currently, or if you're using a weapon with a fire magic modifier. All of them will be now affected by this, which means going down the pure route isn't necessarily the best route. And so for this particular build, we're going for an assassin-based build around parrying and merciless attacks, which is why I'm going to start off with these here. But with them out the way, the next thing that we're going to look at is how the new magic damage tree affects our class. So we're going to take this, which is this is the way, it means magic weapon damage is increased by 10%. And we can see this if we grab ourselves a little standing target. We can grab our knives, and if I tap here, you can see we did 232 damage. And we also have a critical that does 343 damage. There's also, with the Dagger class, a double attack, which actually does even more damage. So that was 686 times 2 for that critical. And that basic one, which does 464 times 2. Now, really, we're just going to see what a basic attack, whether it's critical or just basic, how that has scaled when we pick this skill. And so we're going to unlock it, and we're looking for anything over 232, which apparently that does not count. However, if we now go to all ice damage, which is a specific ice modifier rather than magic weapon, and we take the 30%, you can see how we've gone from a critical of 343 to, I think that was 372. And also our base has gone up by 29 damage as well to 261. And this is particularly beneficial with the weapons that we're going to be using in this build, which is the Avalanche Starter and Ice Coated Daggers. I've gone with them because you get the plus 40% magic damage on both of them. So we're looking for ways to make the most of the skill points that we have. Speaking of skill points, we have a total of 177 skill points available, so we might be further on. We're in the end game at this point. Obviously, if you're going with something that does fire damage, you're going to want this one. If you want shroud damage class, you can go with that one. Thunder and lightning is fantastic as well, and one that's really interesting, but I want to find a weapon that does extra poison damage, is it increases the chances of poisoning enemies to 25% when using daggers with the poisoned blade perk. If you have a particular dagger that has several stacks of poison, then this could be really useful, but I've yet to find all of the highest level weapons at this point. So anyway, we're going into this particular build, which is very much dagger based. So the reason that we're gonna pick dexterity is you can see this increases bow and dagger damage by 5%. So we're gonna go with the extra 10% there, and we can see that reflected in the critical and non-critical damage there. Before we go through all of this, we're also going to look at strength, and obviously this says increase melee damage by 5% per attribute point. So we'll grab that one there. But you're going to see that actually it doesn't affect our daggers. However, in this tree, there's also the Warrior's Path, which says melee weapon damage is increased by 10%. So it's the melee weapon we're looking for here. So we're going to grab that Constitution, and we're going to grab this, and we'll see now that our base attack has increased by a further 18 damage from 280, and then our critical is now over 400. But we can go further with this because we can also grab Thrust, which increases piercing damage. And we can also go with Slasher, which increases the cutting damage of all melee weapons. But if you see now, we have... Oh, darn it. I needed to pick that up. Looks like I'm going to be building another one. All right, so we are back with Johnny and Bravo. And if we hit that, you can see our base has increased to 322 damage now. We also want to have a look over in this tree here. So we really want to have Bash, and it would make sense to go up through here because crash down attack's actually really good as well. But we're actually going to go through the dexterity tree now, and we're going to go with swift shot sustenance. That's going to be useful for us. Increased backstab damage, so we're going to want to slide behind the enemy where possible, and also finesse, which increases the chance of not losing durability. But more importantly, it opens us up to Blood Warrior, giving us survivability, vigorous deflection, and also bash. This one's negligible, but every little helps. We're also going to want breach, so let's now go with heavy-handed, and then we also want breach. And then we also have Shockwave, which triggers a Shockwave when you parry an attack or overpower an enemy. The Shockwave pushes back nearby enemies. It also fills their stun bar, which is really useful if you're trying to fight off a group of enemies. At this point, we're going to invest our points into the Desert Stomach. So we want to increase the chances... increase the amount that we get from our stamina and health orbs. Stamina regeneration of sweets is increased by 50%, can be useful depending on what you go with, or the other option is to go with arachnoid. I prefer this one. We obviously want the dexterity for the extra 5%, and we're going to go with the food slot because the extra food slot allows us to get extra damage out of the foods that we consume. And of course, we're going to grab the base stamina regeneration because we will be using a lot of stamina for this build. Next, we're going to go up this one, the Beastmaster tree. I always take the left-hand side as it stops wild animals from attacking us, but we want the dagger damage increase. And while we're here, we want the dexterity points as well. Slice and dice is also very useful, and same with the reflexing and expose weakness. Moving into the ranger tree, we want all of these as they will allow us to do extra damage with our bow. And of course we want ranger giving us +2 dexterity, critical hit chance, and critical damage, followed by the assassin tree. I want graceful stride as well, which will be 1 point of dexterity for every 2 levels of the flame, which in the end game can be rather useful. Now at this point we still have 15 points left to play around with. For me, I'm going to grab double jump, crash down attack, and at this point I do like updraft. Multi-shot would be useful if we're using regular arrows, which we do. Let's make sure to grab the increased melee weapon critical hit chance. From here, it's really up to whatever you choose. These would be really useful as a melee fighter, but instead we'll go with the multi-shot. And if we can, why not a point in strength, just because we'll get extra damage on the bash attack as well. Wonderful. So now we've got a grand mix of all the different skill trees, and we're going to use this to great effect. The next thing that we want to talk about though is the armor that we're going to be using. And for this, I've gone with the Sunpiercer helmet. I'm actually in 2 minds about this. The melee critical strike chance is really useful, and same with the critical strike damage. However, there is another one that we can take from the smith, which is this one, the Golden Bulwark. As you can see, 44% merciless attack damage, which will probably allow us to finish off enemies easier. So let's take that one. We've also gone with the Golden Bulwark chest, because that gives us health and health regeneration. You're going to find that you are quite squishy, so having a good amount of health and health regen is going to help you get out of those dangerous moments. The Golden Bulwark gloves give us melee damage and block, and yes, these do scale with our characters. On top of this, we have the Ring of the Ancients. At the moment, this is still my favorite one. It gives us plus 10% because we've got 2 of these when it comes to melee damage, but the same with range damage as well. And of course, we get the mana, the health, and the stamina recharge. We've got the Sunpiercer pants because we want the health regeneration and health. And then we have the Golden Bulwark boots. This gives us health regeneration again and stamina regeneration, although I did find the Drac boots, which give us bonus damage against Drac, which might be useful depending on your chosen enemy. Now with our armor out of the way, one thing that I should mention is the weapons. I've already said we've got the ice-coated daggers and the avalanche starter. This is because we've invested in the ice damage. If you go to this section, you can actually see the damage breakup. So for example, here we've got 64.4, you've got your intrinsic damage, which is 46, and then the extra ice damage. Here you can see we've got it split between cutting, piercing, and ice damage as well. So really what we want to find for this kind of build is something that maximizes just one particular damage type. Anyway, now that we've picked our weapons and our armor, we have food to talk about. Now we've got a load of different foods. Personally, for this build, I go with fried rice because we get an extra 21% melee damage. And yes, this does affect the daggers as well. Plantain curry, which gives us the health regeneration and stamina. Chicken soup, because this gives us the 6% range damage and dagger damage. And then we also have the taro root curry, which gives us 21 range damage and 21 dagger damage. Outside of that, we have the potion, the Drac Soulwood Flask, which does, I think it's 10% more damage against Drac. And also we have the elixir that does 20% damage against Fel, if that's what we're going up against. All of this comes together to create a pretty good build, but there's one thing left to talk about, and that is the gems that we're using. So for the avalanche starter, I've gone with a very basic one. I'm actually testing this out, and this is the aerobatic gem, I believe, which gives us an extra amount of piercing damage. So if we fire this, you'll notice that when we jump up and fire, there we go, you can see the 5 extra like shurikens being sent off. It's not that good, So I will be looking at a better build specifically for archers, but we also have the ice-coated daggers, which I don't know if I can have a look at the gem that we've got. Yeah, I can't show it. This is the, in fact, let's go and get it. You can find this particular gem over in the Night Sanctum in Lace Maker Pond, and it's really powerful. In fact, let's start over here and fly down. And for this, we are going to need at least some fatty meat. So we're going to have to slay some of the enemies here. So now that we've made our way to the temple here, it's actually the Soul Forge, isn't it? Or Gem Forge. We just close that. We can actually have a look at the particular gem that we're using, which is this one here, the Gem of Lycanthropy. So this is a really powerful gem, and I'm looking to upgrade it. I don't think I have essence on me. Yeah, I don't have enough, unfortunately. But what this allows is that you have a 30% chance to trigger this on a kill at night. And it will spawn an orb, which will drop an health orb that also restores mana. And on top of that, it increases your max health, max mana, and max stamina while you have this by all of those stats. And melee damage as well. This buff only lasts for 1 minute and 41 seconds, but it makes you an absolute master in the night. And because there's a chance to trigger on kill, the more you kill, the more health you can spawn. And obviously if we're using the merciless attack to do so, we spawn health orbs as well, allowing us to have that extra bit of survivability which we need against groups of enemies. And obviously the Gem of Aerobatics, which I'm not too keen on at the moment, it does 15 projectile piercing damage per projectile that it sends, which is 5 of them. But I'll be looking at changing that. As for the Lycanthropy gem, if you would like me to cover where it is in a future video, do let me know. But it is found in this Night Sanctum here in one of the chests. Now, there are 2 things to bear in mind about this build. Firstly, if you're going against multiple enemies, it can be quite easy to get overwhelmed. And secondly, because you don't have much health, it can be really easy to get killed by bosses. So for them, you might want to sit back and use your bow. But we're gonna head to this area now, and you can see it in action. Generally speaking, you don't want to get too overwhelmed. You want no more than maybe 2 enemies coming at you at once. And remember, try and get behind them and finish them off with a merciless attack, because it's going to trigger that health orb. And it really comes down to getting your hits on those parries. Or hitting the enemy to start off with. Remember to always get behind to get that back attack. And this is without taking the Drac Potion, so obviously we can take that. Oh, and I should also mention, if you can, get the Eternal Frost Arrow too. I didn't realize that was actually available until it was mentioned in the comments the other day, so thank you very much for that. But there you are, guys. We're going to leave it for this one. I hope you liked my build. If you'd like me to cover a different build, let me know in the comments below. And hopefully it's been insightful seeing what you can do with these skill points. If you're wondering what to watch next, then why not check out my guide on all the new changes to farming in Enshrouded, and more importantly, why you might want to be using something like this tiered farm for your rice and algae. But until next time, as always, ciao for now.